Broadcasting live from the flagship studios in New York's Hudson Valley. This is Revenge of the 80s Radio!
Hey Johnny, what's the deal, boy? Is your love for real, boy? When the lights are low, you never hold me close. And I saw you today, boy, walking with them gay boys. God, it hurt me so. Now I gotta know, Johnny, are you
Pretty boy
queer?
Johnny's got a dirty little hobby.
Cause
And
when
when you go to kiss him, bitch, you know there's something
I
missing.
see
Yeah,
you
pretty boy Johnny's
dancing with
got a
your
dirty little hobby. Got in cause Johnny makes all the rules. Cause Johnny makes all the rules. Yeah, Johnny makes all the rules.
I'm so afraid I'll lose you.
Bitch,
If I can't seduce you,
Bitch.
is there something wrong? Johnny, come on strong. Oh, why are you so weird, boy? Johnny, are you queer? Johnny, are you queer? You're pushing me
just letting them ring off my bells. Just letting them ring off my
Johnny,
bells.
are you
Pretty boy
queer?
Johnny's got a dirty little hobby.
Cause
And when you go to kiss him, bitch, you know there's something missing. Yeah, pretty boy Johnny's got a dirty little hobby. Got in cause Johnny makes all the rules. I said, yeah, pretty boy Johnny's got a dirty little hobby. Dirty little hobby.
Oh, why are you forsaken?
Queers.
Love you could be taken. I
Thanks.
wanna give it to you, but you never come through. Oh, why are you so weird? Johnny, are you queer? Boy, when you asked for a date, I thought that you were straight. Johnny, are you queer?
Oh, I've had a piece of that one little Johnny bitch. Another down low lover, another backseat trick. And you know my boy moves fast when he starts tapping that ass. Yeah, spitting faster than an atom. Headed on back to your pad.
Hey Johnny, are you queer, boy? Hey Johnny, Johnny, are you queer? Johnny, are you queer, boy? Johnny, are you queer, boy? Johnny, are you queer, boy? Johnny, are you queer? Johnny, are you queer, boy? Johnny, are you queer,
Got in cause Johnny makes all the rules. Got in cause Johnny makes all the rules. Got in cause Johnny makes all the rules. Got in cause Johnny makes all the rules.
Johnny, Are You Queer? But this one, a version done for the 2010 Pussycat Babylon album with the rap duo Elephant. From Josie Cotton on Revenge of the 80s Radio. Josie's new album, Everything Is Oh Yeah, is out, and she's with us to talk about it. Welcome again to Revenge of the 80s Radio, Josie.
Thank you, Chris. Great to be back.
Always good to have you. Before we get to the new album, what was fun about playing that version of Johnny was when you were on to talk about Pussycat Babylon before, there was a contest where musicians would create their own versions of the song.
Little videos of the song.
Yeah, little videos of the song, sometimes their own versions. A lot of really interesting entries, I must say.
Yeah. Yeah, it was funny. It was a while back. I can't remember exactly what was on there, but it was pretty fun.
I got to see a lot of the videos myself, and it was really intriguing because a lot of people love this song. It's kind of an anthem.
Yeah, I would say for some people.
We had you on in the spring, Josie, where you teased the release of the long-awaited album, Everything Is Oh Yeah. And we're not necessarily talking about post-Pussycat Babylon. We're talking long-awaited since 1986.
Right. This was supposed to be my third album in a triage, as we say. and it never saw the light of day. We lost it and then found it and remixed it and tried to not touch the music at all of the time, and to not modernize it was our goal. And it was hard because that was the time of the Lynn drum machine. So it actually sounds pretty good, but we were dying to overdub drums, and we resisted the temptation to keep it in the true sense from the 80s.
You overcame and stayed true to the 80s values.
Yes.
But what happened in 1986? Why did it never get released? It was all ready to go.
It was ready to go. It was a situation where I had to make a decision if I wanted to go back into the music industry, music business, and it didn't seem like a real fun prospect for me, and my experience thus far had been like trying to struggle through a snowstorm, constantly fighting with the world. It felt like a fight to me anyway, and I just couldn't bring myself to put it out there and subject myself to the insanity that had come from Johnny Are You Queer, basically. It all comes back to that, I think.
Oh, yeah, you had some, people loved the song on one side. On the other side, you had that Reverend Crouch, that lady who was railing against you all over the place.
Yes.
Who can forget that?
Well, I can't forget that, but it was funny to me also. I would say for the most part, people really didn't know there was a controversy. For the big part of the world, they really had no idea what the political backlash was in terms of that song and my career, and so that was something I decided to veer away from releasing this record and going through what I had gone through, and I went on to other projects and other kinds of music I wanted to do, and just experimenting and exploring without a record company breathing down my neck. That was a very wonderful feeling, to not have the corporation atmosphere around a creative process. You know what I mean?
Understandable. I guess the industry suits were also looking in a different direction. A new wave was kind of being pulled off radio and mainstream for that time, and in favor of the hair bands, I suppose, if you will. Well, that's a different story too.
In 1986?
Yeah, about that.
Yeah, that's probably true. I really was not listening so much to current music. I was in another frame of reference at that point, I would say.
You did record the album. You did record the tracks at the time, though, and Brian Setzer did play guitar and do some backing vocals. We'll talk about that. You had some interesting career advice from both Brian Setzer and Malcolm McLaren.
Yeah, that was interesting. That was people from totally different perspectives who were there when we were recording the record, and they each had their own advice to give me, and it was polar opposite. One was to just throw it out the window, the whole record, and start doing dance records. That was from Malcolm. He really thought the future was all about hip hop and dance music, and that rock and roll wasn't relevant any longer. So Brian Setzer, of course, he's the embodiment of rock and roll, and continues to be. He was of a different school, and there was some friction going on between them. It was a conversation I'll never forget, and I was torn because I knew Malcolm was right instinctively. He was so incredibly brilliant, and Brian was right too. They were both correct, but that coupled with my fear of record business, that just made me want to even to not do it even more, to not put it out.
It's almost like everybody piled things up on you.
It's kind of felt like it. I felt like a trapped rabbit.
It's like, let Josie do her thing, and she's been successful as she's been going so far. Let her take her musical direction, see what happens.
Yeah, that's not a record company is not a place for experimentation. It's formulaic, I would say, at its best, and there are exceptions, and of course that's the music we love. But Elektra at that time, I was not the most creative, positive thing in my life. I'll say I'm sure you hear that from most musicians. There's a moment when it does seem overwhelming to be dealing with a company overlooking everything you do.
I have heard things, and it also happens with us here at the radio industry.
Oh.
All of us with jobs and anything else. Somebody's always breathing down your neck, telling you to do something the same as everybody else. There we go. That's the thing.
Yeah, and then the politics, just maddening, the political angle of it all. And I don't mean politics like we know it now, but within the businesses.
What you're saying, Josie, and I think I agree with this, is that there are a lot of industry suits that scared people out of the business, or scared some good creative people out of doing that might have actually brought some better music to the fray.
Yeah, there's that, them being scared off, and also them not even being given a chance to be scared off. They not releasing great music just because they didn't have the vision or didn't have the ears. And so there's that angle of the best music not even getting to the world. So there's that. That's the sad fairy tale of music business.
And Josie Cotton is with me on Revenge of the 80s Radio. One more note on that. Brian Setzer did say, do your own thing and keep doing what you're doing. Whereas Malcolm McLaren said, and this is interesting because apparently he was telling you that you had to become more hip-hop because music was getting into beats and more production than anything else, which actually came true after the turn of the century. You hear now, it's basically cute packaging and beats and auto-tune.
Yeah, he was right, and I could kind of feel that he was right, but Brian was right too. So
exactly.
So that that froze me in my tracks. I couldn't figure it out.
Well, the Stray Cats just put out a 40th anniversary album, so I believe he was doing something right as well.
Yes, absolutely.
And I'm not sure how a hip-hop Josie Cotton would sound anyway. And I don't think he'd ever need auto-tune. He just wouldn't need auto-tune either.
Yeah, I can't see myself in that world. I don't know what he was thinking. And he's not around to ask him, so...
Back to the album, though. I just want to get into this because when we talked earlier this year, you found the music for the album when Stranger Things, the producers of Stranger Things, called you up and asked for some tracks that you didn't release before.
They asked my publishing company for songs from the 80s, records from the 80s that were never released, which was an odd request. It wasn't just songs. They actually wanted recordings from the 80s that were frozen in time, and that was kind of what I had. I didn't know if they were still in existence because they had been moved so many times and lost, and there were fires that they had to be rescued from, and all kinds of crazy things that had gone on. So I didn't know if they were around, but I knew that there was some remnant of that record somewhere, and we just had to go on a hunt.
Josie Cotton is with me on Revenge of the 80s Radio, the new album, Everything Is Oh Yeah. We'll talk more about that straight ahead.
Revenge of the 80s Radio.
Just 17, everything that she's seen is all there in her eyes. So many years of her poor mama's tears and her daddy's sweet lies.
Jimmy Loves Marianne, a classic from Josie Cotton on Revenge of the 80s Radio. Josie is with me now. Everything is Oh Yeah. Let's talk about the album. It seems to me, and again, we talked about how this was the your third album. It was where you were given all that career advice. You were doing something a little bit new, and you kept a little bit of the older stuff intact. It seems like a transition album for you, something where you still had a lot of your classic Josie Cotton, a bit of the homage to the 50s and 60s girl bands, but there was a lot of new in that album as well, something that was kind of ahead of its time. I'll get to one of them here. What I found was, to coin an oft-used phrase, you can take the lady out of Texas, but not Texas out of the lady. Something that shows more in tracks like Money, Love's Love, and The Way You Rock was a nice mix of the country Americana infused with the new wave.
Yeah, I would say that's correct. Some people are calling it rockabilly.
Well,
and
Brian Setzer was on it, so...
yeah. So that's true, and I think I had become a much better singer on this record. I went to places I had never gone before musically with my voice, that's for sure. That was very surprising to hear, especially on the night before with Brian. I had gone to the next phase of my singing, which was wonderful to hear, and also songwriting, and of course I'm always trying to expand on that level. So it was you're correct. It was a transition record. It was not completely set as the two albums were in a certain genre. It was busting out to go somewhere new, and I think you can hear it.
And a lot of future Josie was in there, and I'm talking future Josie as in from Nightingales to the B-Girls on forward, with just that one track, Everything Is Oh Yeah. It's a nice song, it's a jaunting track, if you will, but it also had that 60s, 70s B-movie influence in there.
Yeah, I would say that's also true. That's kind of something that's never left. It's always a little bit in there, the pop sensibility, and in the Western influence, I would say it had to come out at some point. It always seems to sneak in somewhere, with especially the new single, Ukrainian Cowboy, and
I like the video for that one too. That's a fun video.
Yeah.
Now, that's not even on this album. That's something that people should know. Pick up the single separately from this album. It's not on the CD. It was released separately.
Yes. Yeah, that was a brand new single I had ready to go, and I wanted to put something out new before I came out with this Everything Is Oh Yeah, because I just don't want to be completely connected with the 80s forever. So this was something I normally would have waited to put out a whole album, but that's the trend now, to put out singles, and that's what everyone is doing now. So I thought, well, it feels funny to me. I like a complete album. I like to have a story and a beginning, middle, and end. But the single idea and the video has worked out really, really great, especially with everything going on in the world right now. It's almost like, kismet, because Ukrainian Cowboy is. You Google Ukrainian now, and my song comes up along with the Ukraine.
Yeah, I think now, apparently now, if you Google Ukrainian Cowboy, you're going to see a lot of other stuff coming up at this point.
Yeah. So if I'm assassinated, Chris, I was not part of it.
Josie didn't do anything.
No.
And neither did I, by the
me.
way. That's right. And neither did I. That's right. Josie Cotton is with me on Revenge of the 80s Radio. If You Really Want Me To is another track that shows the homage to the girl band songs of the 50s and 60s. One element of classic Josie that you had in this album, along with the 60s girl band sound, you feature the clap a lot. And I really like that in the If You Really Want Me To, because part of your music, I guess the music you're known for, had clapping in the background. It's very noticeable, and it's something that I always thought was signature of an early 80s Josie Cotton track. Am I far off here, or is this something or am I like out in La La Land somewhere?
No. I think that was a part of the Payne Brothers' signature production, and I always felt like it had a surf reference. It was the surf music always had kind of a that beat, not necessarily people clapping, but that background, and they always were putting that in my songs, and that didn't come from me. I love them. I love the claps, but that was definitely a Payne Brothers production, tool that I seem to work really well in quite a few songs.
And Josie, you said that you did a lot of different things with this album. And again, it's a transition from classic Josie to new Josie to even newer Josie after that. Something that your listeners will likely be surprised to hear is the lovely ballad, or should I say kind of semi-ballad, Boulevard, where you harmonize with yourself a lot more than maybe you have before.
Yeah, that was a really important song to me when I wrote it, and I really thought the world would never hear that song, and that did make me sad. And when I would think about that record, that was the one song that I mourned it not being heard. A musician, you want to be heard, and you, especially a songwriter, it's all about if a song isn't heard, is it a song? It's like a tree in the forest that falls. So that was always haunting me, and when I actually heard these tapes and we were playing them after we baked them for 2 days, is what you have to do with these old 24-track tapes. And we were listening. I was going, okay, yeah, there's that. Okay, yeah, that might work. And then I heard Boulevard, and it actually made me emotional to know that it would be out in the universe somewhere, and some people would hear it, and that felt really good to me.
I stopped asking that question where I ask if one or two songs are more special to you than others, because a lot of other artists will say, well, they're all special to me, and maybe not wanting one song to feel bad about the other, but this does sound like it's a very special track to you.
It is, it was, and the other one that's really special on that record, since we're talking about it, I haven't talked to anyone about it, is Far Away from the Crowd. That was right at the end of my experience with Elektra, and when I wrote that, I was actually I was in Berlin, and you could see the Berlin Wall from my hotel room, and I felt so alienated at that moment, and I was about to, my producers had been fired, and I kind of knew the Elektra thing was coming to an end, and that was exactly how I felt, Far Away from the Crowd. And that was a low point. But it's once you can express something and put it into art, it turns it into something else besides what you're experiencing. So that felt good. But immediately after that, I wrote Everything Is Oh Yeah to contradict what I just said in the previous song. It was trying to get me to snap out of it, I guess.
You need some fun with the music as well, and a jaunting track like that, as I said before, is always a good leadoff. Now that you mention that, I'll go to the earlier point in our conversation now, where you said everybody's piling things on you, where you kind of got scared away from the music business. One lyric where it goes, the lovers, the others, they all want a piece. Everybody wants to live my life for me. Something like that.
Yeah.
I get that, because you're telling your listeners, you're telling your fans what's really going on with you in the business and in your personal life, that everybody's saying, hey, Josie, do this, Josie, do that. It almost seemed like music wasn't that much fun to you anymore.
Yes, I would say that's true. That's very true. It wasn't fun at all, and even though when I was in the studio, I guess the word got out, or there was some kind of buzz going on, and I was getting, communications from various labels and various record people that they wanted to hear it or they were interested. And my old manager, Randy Phillips, crawled out of the woodwork, which I knew there was some kind of interest, because he would only show up when something great was about to happen. And then when the tides were turning, it's when he would leave the stage. But so he was around and whining and dining me and various others, and even that made me more scared, because it was repeating itself. Just all the hope you have connected with being heard as a musician, and all your dreams are in those tracks, and I just didn't survive that well. I think I just wasn't suited for it at that point.
Josie, you could have just left this on the shelves. You could have just said, hey, you know what? I like listening to this. It's a point in my life where it was just a hard time. I'm not sure if I want to relive that, but you did.
Yeah, I mean, it did occur to me when we were doing it. I said, I don't know, this is really not a good memory for me. But then I felt like my fans would really appreciate some kind of final ending to these 3 records. I kind of disappeared. People didn't know what happened to me at all, and I felt like it really was for the fans.
Josie Cotton is with me on Revenge of the 80s Radio. The new album is Everything Is Oh Yeah. The new single that's not on the album is Ukrainian Cowboy. Try to Google Ukrainian Cowboy and not Ukraine. It'll be easier to find it right now, especially.
Right. And Cold War Spy, the B side, is also about Russia, and I just became a conduit for everything Russian.
You just want to start trouble.
Well, I want to explore what is going on historically. I'm
Right.
a history nut, and so I did do a lot of research for both of these songs, and the certain periods of history, World War II and the Cold War, Stasi, and I became obsessed with spies and all of that. So that was fun for me. I like concept records now. I like having to use my mind and with the actual writing of it and historical references. Even if people don't even know what I'm talking about, it's amusing to me. I find it funny and strange, and just a really great way to make music more like a little movie. Each song is like a movie that you're visualizing, than just a pop song. That's how I do it now.
I find Russian history very fascinating for a lot of reasons. One, obviously, because a lot of the history was lost thanks to maybe the Genghis Khan invasions, and then, of course, the Communist Revolution and the ripping down of history and the suppression of what happened in the Ukraine and other areas of the old Soviet Union. We hear stories from immigrants or people who were there, or find old accounts of things that were going on in the time centuries past. These are things you really didn't get to hear when you were learning history in maybe our earlier years.
I know. They could make history so fascinating if they actually accounted for what happened and not just memorizing dates and battles and whatnot. The Russians have been through hell. They have really suffered, and all of the the books on Rasputin are so fascinating, and now they have uncovered a whole lot of documentaries that I don't even know these filmmakers were such heroes, because they weren't even armed, but in the trenches with the Russians on the front, and you really do feel like you're in the battle with them, and some amazing ones on Stalin. My God, so that it affected me. It was always in my mind. And I am part Russian. I have a little part of me that is Russian, and my stepfather was a Russian ballet dancer. So one of my stepfathers, and so I feel like it's a little autobiographical. My granddad was a cowboy, so there was a Russian cowboy element going on. The Ukrainian title, it actually just was it was just a moment when Paul Rossler, my producer, said, well, what are we naming this? Because I was still writing it. I didn't really have a finished title, and we were doing the music and toying with all this Eastern European music. And I said, Ukrainian Cowboy, just off the top of my head. It just had a ring to it. And now it's really all you hear about. And I know people are going to be thinking I concocted this intentionally to capitalize on this worldwide event, but honestly, it was just a moment of levity, and now I find the Ukrainians to be heroes of mine. I think that they're amazing. They've pursued democracy perhaps better than we have in America. I mean, in terms of wanting that and wanting to be free. I mean, I think it's I'm kind of moved by what they've gone through.
And they've really suffered under the Soviet regime too.
Yes.
Terribly. This is your heritage, and you should be singing about that. Don't worry about it. What anybody else would think about it, because we should all do that. Although I can't sing, so nobody wants me to sing about my heritage. So every Italian tenor would be like, "Get off the stage. You're done."
But you speak well. You could do oral history or something with your voice.
That's
You've
true.
Mastered that.
Oral history with Chris Cordani. Thank you.
You could interview history.
There we go. Josie, now that we know you're a history buff, I have to ask you this. I like to ask this to people in conversation. If there is one historical figure that you could sit down and have dinner with, any era from any place, who would it be?
Oh, that's a really interesting question. Well, it would be someone that I liked, or someone that I was in awe of, or someone that's just so brilliant. Gosh, that kind of leaves it wide open. In terms of a historical character, Cleopatra, if I could speak Egyptian, I would say would be quite a fascinating character. She was dominating the political scene in ancient Egypt and manipulated some very, very powerful men and was very fashionable as she was doing it. I don't know. I was really intrigued by her.
She's played a part in a few historical stories, I'll tell you that.
Yes.
If it wasn't for one snake bite, she'd be around even longer and maybe doing some more, well, from some points of view, damage, and from other points of view, great things.
Yes.
Back to the music, though, Josie. Are you re-releasing Revenge of the B-Girls? I heard something about that in the next year.
Yeah, well, we're re-releasing Invasion of the Bee Girls, and we've added a new song to it, so it'll be remastered and all of that, and new artwork. So I'm excited about that because no one really heard that record, mainly because I put them out myself, all these records, and didn't know exactly what I was doing. I just wanted to throw them out there and, thought that people would just hear them because they're good, and that's really not the case. So I actually have real record people helping me with my new label, and I'm just excited. And I'm also working on Volume 2, so that'll be fun.
It's more about the promotion sometimes. It's hard to self-publish a book, and it's difficult to self-produce an album and promote it at the same time.
Yeah, it's easy to make the product from me. I have my studio and I have my producer and we have the songs, and that part is fun now, and that's not the issue. The issue is how you get it to the people's ears. So I just think this is it was such a special record for people who love the genre of B movies and alternative world of just scary movies and crazy movies, exploitation movies, that it never got to that audience. And so that's what I'm really excited about happening. The right people can get this record.
For listeners who have not heard Josie's album Revenge of the B-Girls quite yet, if you haven't heard any of the tracks on our program, which we do play them, you can find on YouTube the video for Maneater. So check that out.
Right. Yes.
That's the one with our friend Ginger Coyote in there too. With I think she has a chainsaw,
right? Yeah, she comes out with an electric carving knife.
That's what it was, electric carving knife. Something dangerous.
So yeah, it was unplugged, but it was still an electric carving knife.
So Josie, I see you're hitting the road pretty soon. Some of that with Missing Persons.
Yeah. Yes, that's exactly right. And I have not met her yet, but we did a show together, an 80s revival show, Lost 80s, and this will be fun. This will be my full band, and it's in the LA area in December.
The name of the album is Everything Is Oh Yeah. Josie Cotton is the artist. The single, Ukrainian Cowboy. Josie Cotton, good luck on the road. We wish you the best with the re-release of Revenge of the B-Girls and the upcoming Part 2, which we're really excited about.
Thank you so much, Chris. Good to talk with you.
Great to talk with you, too. Let's play a track from Everything Is Oh Yeah, Far Away from the Crowd by Josie Cotton on Revenge of the 80s Radio.
I'm gonna stand far away from the crowd. Leave all the world behind me. What's done is done. I'm gonna hold my head up high. Let them laugh, yeah, when I walk by. 'Cause it gets to the point, gotta take a look. Forget the pictures in the storybook. That's all behind you when you're far away from the crowd. Far away from the crowd. Every face I see is the voice I hear. Oh, baby, till I can feel my arms start to disappear. Oh, baby, and you can bet they're gonna let you know when you don't fit it with the steady squirt love. They won't let go when it gets to the point. Gotta take a look. Forget the pictures in the storybook. No more heroes, you're far away from the crowd. Far away from the crowd. Father wants you to make him proud. Preacher says it's not long now. The lovers, the others, they all want a piece. Everybody wants to live my life for me, and it gets to the point, gotta take a look. Forget the pictures in the storybook. They're all alone now. All alone now. All alone now. You're far away from the crowd. All alone now. All alone now. So far from home now. You're far away from the crowd. It's all behind you. It's all behind you. It's all behind you. Far away from the crowd.
From her new album, Everything Is Oh Yeah, Josie Cotton on Revenge of the 80s Radio. The track, Far Away from the Crowd. I'm Chris Cordani. We hope you enjoyed our conversation with Josie. The new album, Everything Is Oh Yeah. She also released a single earlier this year, Ukrainian Cowboy. Catch up with Josie regularly on her website, josiecottonmusic.com. We also have past interviews with Josie Cotton, including one earlier this year. You can hear them all on the website, revengeofthe80sradio.com.